Hello, I'm Pao, and in this video, we're going to talk about a woman known as Aem, who was accused of taking the lives of 14 people. It was believed that these people had died of natural causes, but after investigating, it was discovered that the circumstances were actually quite suspicious, and all of these people were connected to Aem. Coincidence? Honestly, this is a case that left me in shock. I hope you find the video informative, and let's get started with all the details. The case takes place in Bangkok, Thailand. On April 14, 2023, around 10:30 a.m., a woman was walking toward the riverbank to release some fish, which is a traditional practice where it's believed that if you free an animal that's in danger or captivity, you'll receive good karma. Unfortunately, the woman wasn't able to fulfill her intention because as she was walking, she fainted and collapsed to the ground. The people around her helped, called emergency services, and the paramedics arrived right away. They gave her first aid and tried to revive her, but sadly, the woman had already passed away. Her name was Miss Cyanide, also known as Koi. She was a 32-year-old businesswoman. The doctors said that her death was possibly caused by cardiac arrest. Simply put, her heart just stopped beating. But her family didn't believe that was the real reason, especially since Koi was only 32 years old, very young, and had no health problems. On top of that, some of her belongings had disappeared. For example, her wallet, which had more than $1,400 in cash, her 2 cell phones, her purse, and her car keys. Her family knew something wasn't right and insisted that the authorities investigate the case thoroughly. After so much insistence, the officers checked the surveillance cameras, where it could be seen that Koi was with a friend. That friend was Sararat Rangsiwuthaporn, who was known as Aem. Sorry for not pronouncing the names correctly. The two women were walking together until seemed to say something to her friend like, "Oh, I forgot something in the car. You go ahead, go to the river, and I'll catch up with you in a bit." Koi keeps walking, but Aem crosses the street and starts acting suspiciously. She was looking from side to side, seemed confused, walked in the opposite direction, and overall it was unusual behavior because it looked like she was either watching her friend or hiding from her. Then she went down the stairs toward where Koi was. However, before she could reach her, she saw her friend faint and collapse on the ground. And instead of helping her or calling emergency services, she turns around, goes back up the stairs, and leaves the place as if nothing had happened. Which is really strange because why wouldn't you help your friend? If you see your friend faint, why wouldn't you call emergency services or do something? After watching these videos, the officers questioned Aem, who at first denied having been with her that day. But when they showed her the footage, Aem said something like, "Oh, right, I had forgotten. But yes, I was with my friend the day she died. I did see her faint, but even so, I turned around and left her alone." According to Aem, she and Koi were planning to release some fish, but while they were on the pier, Aem remembered she had some errands to run. She saw her friend faint, but didn't help her because there were already other people calling emergency services. So she simply turned around and went to take care of her errands because she was in a hurry. She said that she took Koi's missing belongings, but sent them to her family 5 days after her death. The strange thing is that she did send a package with some of her belongings, but others were missing, like cash, her wallet, and one of her cell phones. An autopsy was performed on Koi, but they couldn't determine the cause of death. It was believed to be poisoning, since there are some substances that can't be identified or can go unnoticed in an autopsy. Koi's family wanted justice, and they weren't going to stay silent. They contacted different media outlets to share Koi's story, and that's how the case reached various news programs and newspapers. Thanks to the media coverage, soon the police department began receiving calls from different people saying that their relatives had also died under mysterious circumstances, very similar to Koi's case. And all the victims were people close to Aem. The officers received several reports, but so far it's believed that there are 14 victims of Aem. He took the lives of 14 people in less than 8 years. The woman was arrested on April 23, 2023. She was 36 years old at the time of her arrest. Let's talk about Aem's life. She married a police officer. They had 2 kids together. Her husband was doing well at work and was promoted several ranks, eventually becoming a lieutenant colonel. They lived a good life, they were doing well financially, their children were very cute, very smart, got good grades, and in general, they seemed to be an ideal family, until they got divorced in 2020. Even so, they decided to remain on good terms, stayed in constant contact, but mainly for the well-being of the children. A couple of years later, AUM met another man, Mr. Day, with whom she started a relationship and was even pregnant by him. Elle met his family, who said she was very nice and that Day seemed very happy with her. But sadly, he passed away suddenly on March 12, 2023, at 1:30 p.m. Was with him when he suddenly fainted. Called emergency services, but by the time the paramedics arrived, Day had already passed away. The doctors said the cause of death was cardiopulmonary failure. At first, no one suspected anything. His family was in complete shock, so they couldn't even imagine that this could be a crime. Something suspicious is that same night, AUM went out partying with her friends to celebrate her birthday. Why would you go out to celebrate if your boyfriend and the father of your future child had just passed away? 6 days after his death, Aem took control of all of Day's money and property. His family didn't think anything was wrong with this because they liked Aem and she was also pregnant. So Dave's money and assets belonged to her. But she also started selling some of his belongings like clothes and jewelry. Dave's relatives didn't like this because they also wanted to keep some of his clothes or belongings to remember him by. A friend of Daddy mentioned that he didn't know his Aem very well. He had only seen her a couple of times, but he didn't really like her because she only talked about money. She bragged about being involved in cash loan businesses, buying and selling stocks, and pawning goods. She also mentioned that her ex-husband was a high-ranking police officer and that he would protect her if anything bad ever happened to her. He also confessed that on the day Davy passed away, before Aem called emergency services, she called him. She told him that Debbie was feeling very bad, but he was bleeding a lot. So his friend went straight to his house, and when he walked in, he saw Daisy lying on the floor. He was unconscious, he was bleeding, he had blood in his mouth, and that's when they called emergency services. He also said that his fingernails were black. His friend thought that Debbie had taken some kind of substance and was having an overdose. But as we know, the doctor said that he actually died of natural causes. Even so, his friend was suspicious of Aem. A few days after the funeral, his friend went to Dadi's house under the pretense that he wanted to visit Aem to make sure she was okay, that she didn't need anything, that everything with the pregnancy was fine. But in reality, he went to inspect the place, and when he started looking around the house, he realized there were some suspicious things. For example, many of the belongings were already gone. She had sold everything. And worst of all, he found a bottle with a label that said cyanide, which is a poisonous chemical substance that is highly harmful to the brain, heart, and nervous system, and can be lethal. It's a deadly poison that, besides being tasteless, can have a smell that goes unnoticed. So victims who are poisoned with it don't realize they've ingested it until it's already too late. Its symptoms appear quickly, which include difficulty breathing, confusion, loss of consciousness, and it can cause death in as little as 15 minutes, depending on the dose and how it's administered. Also, many toxicology tests don't detect this substance. It's only detected with special tests. That is, if someone gets a general blood test, it might not show up, but if there's suspicion, then they'll do a specific test. Cyanide is used to manufacture paper, textiles, plastics, and pesticides, among other products, but its use is regulated. It's supposed to be a very hard substance to get. It's not available for sale to the general public. You have to have something like a license, but it also depends on the regulations of each country. After Aem's arrest, search warrants were obtained not only for her residence, but also for her ex-husband's and her mother's. In them, large amounts of cyanide were found, as well as other illegal substances. In addition, there were empty capsules that were later discovered to have been filled by her with cyanide, which she sold to people claiming they were vitamins or weight loss medication. As I mentioned, it's believed that she took the lives of more than 14 innocent people. Some of her victims were also police officers, because she had met them through her ex-husband. Her victims were usually close friends or acquaintances of hers. But why did she do this? Her motivation was money. She chose two types of victims. The first were people who were doing well financially. Maybe they weren't millionaires, maybe they weren't super rich, but they had extra income that they wanted to invest or make the most of the money they had saved up. She would tell them to invest in her businesses, which turned out to be scams, but her friends saw that she was doing well financially and trusted her. They would give her their savings as an investment, and Aem would take their lives so she wouldn't have to pay them back or give any explanations. Her other type of victim was the complete opposite. They were people who had financial problems and needed some kind of loan. So Aem would tell them, "I can lend you money. I won't charge you high interest or anything. I just need you to sign a life insurance policy that stated that in case of death by natural causes, the insurance money would go to Aem to pay off the debt." This is something that banks in Asia and other lending systems usually do. So her victims didn't suspect anything. Besides, they trusted her, and she offered them loans with very low interest because Aem knew that her real profit wouldn't come from charging interest, but from collecting the insurance. Her victims had died in the same way as Day and Koi, from natural causes. They would simply faint and lose their lives, even though they were healthy, had no health problems, and were very young. Most of her victims were in their 20s or 30s, and many of them also had black or very purple nails at the time of their death. One of the victims was a woman named Naya. She had asked Aem for a loan and put up her car, a Honda Civic, as collateral. In August 2020, Naya and Aem went out to dinner together. That same night, Naya's body was found in the bathroom. She was face down and her face was completely purple. Her family didn't suspect Aem because the doctors told them the cause of death was circulatory and respiratory failure. Aem kept the car that Naya had left as collateral for the loan, and on top of that, her family had to pay her some interest and another sum of money. But since the loan Naya had signed wasn't in Aem's name, they didn't suspect her. They only paid for these services, kind of like insurance, without knowing that they were actually giving the money to Aem because they thought she had hired a company or a bank or something like that. So the family, without knowing it, ended up paying the money and the car to the person responsible for taking their loved one's life. The detectives managed to trace the cyanide that Aem used to a store in downtown Bangkok, which had sold more than 1,500 bottles of cyanide without any regulation, which is extremely dangerous. Who knows how many other people lost their lives because of that store's negligence? Currently, Aem is in custody awaiting her sentence. When she was arrested, she was 4 months pregnant, but she lost the baby a couple of months later while in prison. She was found guilty of taking the lives of 14 people in the fraud. 180 bank accounts belonging to her were found, with around $3 million. It was also mentioned that Aem had much more money, but she lost it all gambling. A pleaded not guilty, saying that all the evidence was planted and someone was trying to make her look guilty for a crime she didn't commit, but no one believed her. It seems that up to now she still hasn't been sentenced, but it's very likely that she'll get the death penalty or life in prison. Relatives of the victims want her to stay in prison for life so that she suffers for a longer time. Update, she has already been sentenced to death, but there's still no execution date. While researching, I also found that in Thailand, they don't usually use the death penalty. The last case I found where someone received this sentence was in 2019, and before that, it was in 2008. So it's not a sentence they hand out lightly, as it should be, obviously. Her ex-husband was also arrested and sentenced to 16 months in prison, and her former lawyer got 2 years in prison for being complicit in the frauds. And that's all the information. I think it's a really terrifying case. I feel so sorry for all the victims and their families. I find it unbelievable because it's one of those cases where you realize you really can't trust anyone, since the people whose lives she took were people who trusted her, who thought they were her friends, who believed she was a good person. I mean, for example, she took Day's life and they were gonna have a baby together. How sad it is to think that someone you trust could be poisoning you without you even suspecting it. How horrifying. If you liked the video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a like. If you're not subscribed, you should subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. If you like my content and want to see more, I would really appreciate it if you check out my vlog channel, where the content is very different, but if you want to be like my close friend, that's where I share my whole life with you. Just like on my social media, my Instagram will be showing up here in case you want to follow me. And that's it! Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!